Students, I know my lighting is not great today, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the overarching conceptual relationships between the things you're looking at this week. So if you've looked through the course materials, maybe you've already read them, you're looking at Nathan Shedroff's paper on information interaction design, and then you're reading Henry Jenkins' paper on games as narrative architecture. So I want to talk a little bit about how these things are related. So if you look at the course documents, what we're really doing this week is looking at the foundations of story. This is like the pre-storytelling. Next week you're going to look at what stories are and how you make them, but there's actually work you have to do before you even get that far. Before you think about what your story is, you have to think about the why. Why do I have a story? And that's what Shedroff is talking about. And then Jenkins is talking about how we can help our readers, our participants, whatever we want to call them, depending on what kind of story we're telling. How do we help them understand the reason so they can have synthesized meaning from our story? So what Shedroff is saying that he's the information interaction architecture or like model that he comes up with is explaining to you how do you take data and make that meaningful. Information comes from data, so you can look at data about, Ball State students, the average age, where they come from, the kind of classes they take, and you start to get some information. You can observe a Ball State student, and you could take in all the data about the things they say, the things they do, and start to get information about that person. Or if you do it for a group of people, maybe you can sort of synthesize from that an idea of what the average Ball State student is like. So Shedroff is saying we take data, we synthesize it into information. Hopefully people can get that information. From the information they can get knowledge and then wisdom. And Shedroff is saying we can help people go from data to information to knowledge to wisdom through a design process. We create some method for people to do that, and he's suggesting interaction. So through interaction, people can go from data to wisdom. And so people can get meaning out of something by interacting with it. And so this is great for stories. This is what's happening in a story, right? You're reading the story, and from the information and the data you get in the story, you are starting to gain knowledge about something, and hopefully that becomes wisdom. A great example is Darfur is Dying, a game that you can play online. I'm going to show you just a short example of. So this is a game that takes data and information about the genocide in Darfur and about the people who live there, and through a game presents that data and information. So as a person, just a random person playing this game, I go to the game, I start playing it, and I start to see the information about Darfur and the people who live there, and I start to interact with that information and gain knowledge and hopefully wisdom. So in Darfur is Dying, you choose a Darfurian to play as, and your first step is to forage for water. So already we're getting some information about what it's like to live in Darfur, and I'm just going to play through it really quickly. So in this game, I'm kind of going through the day in the life of someone in Darfur. I'm trying super hard to outrun. Yes, I can't do it. Okay. So the game presents information, and by interacting with this story through the game, I hopefully will gain some knowledge about what's really happening in Darfur. So in the model that Shedroff presents, the data and information is presented in the story in a game format, and by interacting with it, I gain knowledge. So the important thing to take away here is that stories are in the service of something. This is a story presented as a game. I interact with it, and I learn information that I get meaning out of it that is useful in my life. And so Shedroff is asking you to think about, before you even start making a story, he's asking you to think about, what are you doing? What is the story for? What is the information that you are disseminating? And it can be, there's different types of information that he talks about. So it can be news information like Darfur is Dying presents. It can be kind of like this emotional information that has thematic significance that might get you thinking about your life, something sort of philosophical in your life, how you treat people, how you live your life. And then Shedraff is saying, how do we organize it? How do we make it interactive? How do we present it as a sensory experience so people can remember it and interact with it? So before you even get to the storytelling part, you have to think about, why am I telling the story? If you just make a story in this class because I told you to, and you just come up with, okay, there's a character and he does the, you just come up with it just because, you just come up with the plot points for just randomly, I will ask you, why do I care? Why would I ever look at this? Why would anyone care? People care about Darfur is Dying because it's something that's actually happening in the world. And if I want to explain to someone what's going on over there, I am not a witness to it, so I can send them to the game and I can say, well, I learned a lot from here. Why don't you take a look at it? And not all stories, I know I'm focusing on kind of the information news, or news information aspect. Even stories like Star Wars. Star Wars has a thematic significance. Anyone who watches that movie takes some kind of meaning away from it. There's kind of a moral lesson to it almost, and it can make you think about yourself and who you are and how you live your life. And that's information as well. That's meaningful. That's meaning someone can get out of the story. So in this class, you really have to kind of pull out your English lit major side and think about, what is the story in the service of? Stories are in the service of some kind of meaning, some kind of information that allows people to gain knowledge of something, whether it's themselves or something that's happening in the world. So Shedraff is getting you thinking about that before you even start thinking about what your story actually is. Now, Jenkins uses games to kind of explore how stories can be interactive. So Shedraff is saying you need to have a reason for your story, and then you need to come up with a way for people to interact with it. And Jenkins is saying, here's different ways you can help people interact. So he's really focusing on spatial stories, story worlds, where instead of creating plot points as a story, you are creating a world in which someone can explore. So Darfur is Dying is actually using this technique, and I'll show you after you collect water, you move on to the next level. I'll show you the next level. Okay, here it is. First, I had to get through the water collection. So in the next level, you manage a village in Darfur. And so this is a story world where you are free to explore. That's me right here in the purple. So I'm free to explore, and different things happen throughout the day that I have to deal with. So right now, I think I have water. I'm watering the crop. I just need to keep doing this all day. Things will pop up. The militia might stop by. I might have some other issues. Crops might start dying. I need to go get more water. So it's a story world in which I can explore, and through that exploration, I'm learning something about the meaning behind this story. So Jenkins is talking about what are different... Oh, let me stop this so you don't hear it anymore. So Jenkins is talking about what are some different strategies for presenting the story. Do you want to present the story as a story world? If so, does it have an embedded narrative? Does it have an emergent narrative? That's what you're going to read about this week. So I hope that helps you sort of think about what Shedraff and Jenkins have to do with each other conceptually. We're really getting started with the pre-planning of a story, the why. Why are we telling a story? So in this class, your challenge is to create a transmedia story, but you have to start with the why. What is the information that we want to give out? Is it news-driven? Is it some kind of emotionally driven information? You have to have a reason. If you don't have a reason, every time you show me something from your story, I will ask you why. Why am I looking at this story? I think everyone has read a story that has no purpose. A story that, your cousin or something was like, oh, read my story. And it just has no purpose. There's no information you get from it. It's just a story where they're like the main character and they just run around and are awesome, and they just wrote it totally narcissistically or something. And those stories are never going to go anywhere. Those stories will never connect to anyone. No, people can't pull meaning from them because they weren't planned to have meaning. So this week you're looking at how do we start with meaning? How do we build that into narratives? How do we look at the meaning and figure out what kind of narrative we need? And then next week you'll look at stories and how you can apply storytelling techniques to make your idea of meaning a reality.